Yeah, should be fine.
Cool. There's your crib notes.
Yeah, notes. Okay.
I feel fucking higher than you.
You're a little higher. I think we're okay. So, yeah, for you guys, this is Rob Scarborough, a very accomplished DP as well. Long time ago, we both graduated Humber College. Not that you need to know any of that stuff.
2000? I would graduate in 2004, I think. 3.
3, yeah.
You did 4.
I think I was 4.
Yeah.
But enough with that. Talk a little bit about his film Room for Rent. Maybe you give us a brief synopsis about it.
Yeah. It's about a guy who won the lottery when he was 18 years old. You gonna cut it at all?
Maybe.
So it's about a guy who is 18 years old, won the lottery when he was 18 years old, and now he squandered all the money, and now he's been living in his parents' house his whole life, and now he's in his 30s, broke in his 30s, and his parents want to downsize and retire, so basically they ask him to either move out or start paying rent, and he comes up with this idea that, why don't we I'll just get rid of all this stuff in this one room and we'll rent that room out. And so they agree to that, and then this guy shows up the first night they have it for rent, and basically moves into the house that night, and basically becomes a movie about this stranger living in this like sort of secure world of our character, who eventually is the stranger for some reason is trying to sort of push our main character out of the house, and so he can take over this sort of cushy life that he leads. So basically it's called Room for Rent because there's a room for rent in it.
I saw a pre-screening of it, so it's a little bit changed, I guess, from when I saw it. But I was really, we'll get to the bulk of it right now. I was really interested in the lens selection that you chose for this film. It was definitely a bold choice for the type of story that it was.
Yeah. Well, I think with the initial conversations I had with the director, Matt Atkinson, we wanted to stay away from like typical comedy looks, like every comedy looks kind of the same. Like Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg sort of decided to use real, accomplished DPs at some point, and so their movies are starting to look better and better. They look like dramatic films, but they're comedies. So it's starting to happen, but we wanted to stay away from that sort of flat, everything's in focus, very square, boxy frame comedy, and we wanted to sort of, because it is sort of like it's sort of like a film noir a little bit, like a sort of a undertone of film noir of like this stranger coming in, that classic tale of a single white female, or Night of the Hunter, or that kind of feeling of a stranger coming in, seemingly he's really nice, but really he's got some scary, weird undertones. So we wanted to make it feel like like Cape Fear, but meets like a movie like Cyrus, where it's like kind of in the middle somewhere. So the reason why we use those lenses is like we're in a like little tiny house, and there's a lot of characters. So not only does it help, with this frame, with the 239 frame, I can hide lights above people, where it's like the ceilings are only 10 feet tall or something, and it also can fit 4 or 5 characters in a frame at the same time, and not have to be as far away as possible, or on a super wide lens. So the anamorphic lensing was basically chose so we can fit all the characters in, and so I can actually potentially hide lights outside of frame in case I need to, on top and bottom. And again, we just wanted to keep away from the stereotypical comedy feel, and I think that's as far away as you can get. Anamorphic, make it feel like make it look more like a film noir than a comedy. That was kind of the idea. So I think the lens choice is pretty obvious for us, I guess.
Yeah.
So I did a bunch of tests. Like I did tests with the Cook anamorphics. I did tests with like Lomo. Is that what's it called? Like super old 1960s, 70s. And the Hawk, the new Hawks. What are they called? Well, these ones, the ones we ended up with were Hawk C series, because they had, but both Matt and I both like love movies from the 80s, and all those like Spielberg movies that were shot on anamorphic always have flaws. Like you can see the focus pulling, you can see the edges of the corner of the frames are a little out of focus. Like there's all these flaws that sort of all new lenses I feel don't have any of those flaws anymore. Like, so and as much as I love the Cook anamorphics, they're very, feels very clinical for this particular film. So we went with we wanted flaws. We wanted to feel the focus being pulled when you're racking between two characters. I want to feel the anamorphic breathe. And I wanted some, with the C series, the Hawk anamorphics, there's a lot of flaws, like maybe too many, but we kind of embraced all those things. We never really fought against it, Sometimes when you're on the super wide Hawk C series, like it's really out of focus around the edges, so sometimes we'd have to bring the characters into the frame a little bit, because the edges are just like, if you put someone on the edge on like the widest lens on the 25, which is really wide, like they start to bend, and they also start to be out of focus. So we'd have to bring people into the edges, and just be conscious of that. Sometimes you're in a hurry and you lens it up and block it out, and then you're watching the first take, and you're like, oh shit, they fell into the bad spot of the lens. Like, damn it. So that sometimes they cut around that a little bit, because there was some times where you can't help it. Someone walks into the crappy part of the lens.
Yeah. Is there any frames or shots that you recall from the film that kind of show that?
Yeah, like this the end scene. So yeah, like right in here. So this is like the reason why we shot these lenses. Like this is a tiny house, and we didn't have a lot of options as far as like where I could put the camera. It's like either this end or this end. And I always wanted to light from the windows again, so then everyone can move around at any point and just go anywhere they want. So with this anamorphic, now I can I probably had something just above frame, maybe just to fill it in, and I can hide stuff maybe right above here to push some stuff back down. But in general, just to fit all those people in a frame, with spherical lenses, you really couldn't do that. Even my wide, I don't really like shooting with super wide lenses, with spherical lenses. I still might like the way they look. I don't like how they move when you pan. I just don't intend to shoot anything wider than a 25 usually. Mm-hmm. So this gives me the option to shoot a wide shot, but also it still doesn't feel like distorted. Yeah. So the one thing we did do in the post, which is I'm not sure if Hawk will want to know this, but we did have to correct some of the bends on the edges of the frame. So in Resolve there's an awesome, really simple, very quick plugin for anamorphic, because they invented it for drone footage, because the super wide drone footage always has curves on the edges. Mm-hmm. So they invented it for that, but then basically what it does is just does that to the edges. So instead of it usually you'd see it a lot if we didn't correct some of this stuff.
Yeah. Who is the post host in your colors you worked with as well?
Hardave Graywall, I think I pronounced his last name. And it was Urban posted it. So they have this new 4K suite at Urban, where I think we're the first or second feature to use it. It was a beautiful place. Yeah.
Cool. Great. Yeah. Do you want to talk more about the lenses or about the look or anything else?
Yeah.
A different shot. Something else.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of I don't know what other things.
Actually, that scene was really cool when I saw it the first time. The flares you got off that.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if you knew what was going to happen to you. It was pretty heavy.
And that's just that's the part of the stuff that, again, Cook anamorphics don't have. They don't have nice flares. They don't have... Again, I love them for different projects, but for this specific project, we wanted to make it feel like a movie that we would have watched in 1989 as kids, or 91 or something, right?
Yeah.
So, and that always had, interesting flares and dirty aberrations on the lenses, and it just wasn't so clinical. Even the new Leica lenses, which I love for commercial work, but sometimes for film, I feel like they're just very clinical. It feels like everything's way too sharp, and way too. It's perfect. They're perfect glass. I mean, that's, it's a thumbs up for them, but sometimes it doesn't always work for the feel of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the lenses were a big character in your story.
Yeah.
Just the look that you got from it. You had that shot of the...
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, that was crazy. And that was a bold move on your part too.
Yeah, so you can sort of see, like, I love seeing this stuff. I mean, with naked bulbs, it's pretty easy. You always kind of get that stuff. And again, this room is tiny. This is probably like a 12, or maybe a bit more. Yeah, that's about 12 by 15 room. And so with a spherical lens, I couldn't get this shot unless I used like a 16 mil or something, right? Yeah, and I'd be like against and I couldn't do any movement and stuff. So this is, I mean, again, this is kind of one of the reasons why it's very handy. I mean, and I guess the Anamorph, the only problem was that they're pretty big and chunky, right? So any handheld work, I always had an easy rig, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but then in a small house, the easy rig becomes really fucking big, you know?
Did you have any issues or concerns around the focus range that the lenses have, like close
focus? So every time I use anamorphics, you just get diopters right away. And I mean, and my camera assistant Jackson Young, he's the one that sort of always suggests that, and sometimes I forget, like, oh yeah, we need to get those too. But he just automatically, they're on the package now every time we use anamorphics. But for this specifically, they're really like, it's, I think the closest focus was probably 2.5 feet at like most. So there's times where that's probably only 4 feet away from the character. So sometimes you want to pull to that guy, and we couldn't do that a lot of times. So you'd have to sort of you have to move the characters in a position where I can get, with a diopter in there, you can get him and pull to the foreground. So there's a little bit of adjustment sometimes when we had a really tight shot. But other than that, the diopters were really only used for like close-ups of hands or eyes or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's a shot later on, maybe, yeah, like right here. So this is, I'm sitting on a bed in this shot, like, and the camera's in the corner. This is even a tiny room. This is probably like, I could almost reach side to side. So it's probably about 10 feet wide it's probably about 10 by 10 room, tiny room. And this is the main character's room, so we're in here a lot, which is like hell on earth. But so I was there's a water bed, so we couldn't move the water bed. So we wanted to get this shot of him looking at him on the bed. And so our main character has a water bed, so we can't move the water bed in and out of the room. So it stayed there. So we had to build, a platform on top of it. Whenever I wanted to get the camera on top, like to shoot the reverse of anything, I'd have to be on the water bed. So they built like this plywood stand that I could go on and stand on. But this is like, the camera's literally like, it's like this close to the guy. It's like, they had no other choice. It's like this close. So there's a diopter in front of there, and he can't move too far back. He can probably get this close to the lens, but he can't go past, because the diopter is it's like a number 2 probably. It's so specific that he couldn't like lean back too much, or we couldn't pull. So yeah, so that I mean, but that's all that stuff's kind of like the charm of using anamorphics, I think. Like I kind of like being restricted sometimes, or seeing flaws, or I don't know. That there's something to me that just reminds me of old films that I used to watch and love, and
Yeah, definitely get the nostalgic feeling when you're watching this film.
Mm-hmm.
And the lens package you got from
Claremont Camera. Yeah, they did this awesome. James over there. They were just they're awesome. They kind of just made it work when we needed things, and they let us test the lenses there. They're awesome. They helped ship it to Winnipeg and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, so you shot the whole thing in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's no camera department there, so you have to ship it in from Vancouver. A lot of the camera stuff has to come from Vancouver, so we had to like prep in Toronto. Jackson prepped it all here, and then they shipped it to Winnipeg, and they had it for about a week before the production, so we could rebuild it and make sure that we had everything we need. And then all the pieces would have had to come from either Claremont, like overnight, or from Vancouver somewhere. So I'm not sure if we had to actually use our Vancouver connections, but I think Jackson did a good job of like just getting in a few extra pieces in case we needed them throughout the production, because we were kind of on an island a little bit in Winnipeg.
Yeah, and the camera package you went with for this as well was?
Yeah, it was the Alexa XT, so it was the 2K. I wanted to shoot, so the Mini had just kind of came out maybe 3 or 4 months before. We shot this May last year, end of May, early June. So I think it was about 6 months before the Mini came out. And so in Toronto and Vancouver, nothing was available for this like for those times that we were shooting. We shot for 17 days, so nothing was available. So I wanted to shoot 4K, true 4:3 sensor. So it's a very specific camera. It narrows it down to like I wanted to do true anamorphic 4:3 sensor. So I should move it. But they.
Yeah, we're still rolling. Okay, cool.
But there's just nothing available. Like there was a couple cameras at the time here. There's a couple cameras in Vancouver, but none of them were available for those specific days in June last year. So I ended up going with an older camera for budgetary reasons. We couldn't afford to shoot 4K for a couple reasons. So we went with 2K, which is fine. Which I've used Alexa for 2K for like 3 or 4 years now. So it's like I'm not.
It's solid.
It's solid. Yeah. And usually it's gonna like the only time that you really notice the 4K is when it goes into theaters, and we expect this to have a limited release, so it's gonna be mostly on TV screens. So 2K is what they're gonna stream it anyways, or on Blu-ray it's 2K is a high resolution. So all around 2K is fine. I mean, it would be nice to have a few for effects reasons, and for I don't know, just sharpness. Sometimes I wish I had that 4K. But in general, I think it looks the XT was a good choice. So we used the 4:3 sensor, Alexa XT, the Hawk Anamorphics, sort of because it was an older camera. It only shot 2K, so it wasn't being used in a way. So it was cheaper. That helped the budget. The budget's pretty low, so I mean any chance we can get.
Maybe talk. Just to close off about the lighting package that you took on this project to get yourself through.
Yeah. Well, it was a package truck from White's with a few augmented things, but in general, I just used inside the house. I'd always use super small sources, like either 1x1 LEDs to bring up a background, or like short keynotes or something. I don't like to use LEDs on faces, and I was trying to, like there's so many characters and there's so much blocking and moving around that we wanted them not to be boxed into like their marks. So I wanted to light from the window a lot. So I had a couple 18s and some 4s just sort of always outside of windows, and they'd either turn on or they'd just turn off just to get contrast in the background. If you want more contrast, you just turn off that 4K in the background. So for shooting on one side of the house, I'd have light lined up, and then just turn on and turn off. And then once we shot next, they basically would, because it's a small budget, to take those lights, put them on the other side through the windows. And that allowed the actors to kind of do whatever they want and not get boxed into like, I have to be here. So they could, because a lot of them are comedians and they're improv comedy people.
Yeah.
So you want them to be free. And for Matt too, the director, he likes that as well, to feel a bit more loose. Mm-hmm. So basically I had, as mostly HMIs, other than at the nighttime scenes where I probably use like some Kinos inside, and maybe even an HMI outside gelled like half CTO, just so it looks a little blue. But in general, it's a lot of HMIs through windows, either as bounce, like ultra bounce, like booklight style, just like super soft coming in from the window, or and later on in the movie it gets a bit darker, like as far as thematically gets darker, so that I just would spin the head around and maybe just put an opal in front of it to take the edge off it. So now it's like harder light on everybody inside the house. So it kind of went from like this nice, soft feeling, comfortable place to a bit, as the movie goes on, it gets a bit contrastier and a bit harder light sources. As sort of this guy gets creepier and more, like who the hell is this guy? So it's it's a normal package truck from White's with a few augmented things, but in general I kind of used all HMIs outside through windows and some small fixtures inside. It was really simple. Again, it's a really small. We couldn't clamp lights to anywhere in the house. Like we couldn't even use spreaders on the walls. Like the owner of the house wouldn't allow us to do that. So that limited us a lot to what I could do. And if I had a boom arm backlight or boom arm sort of filling in some face, I'd usually have to be right up to the ceiling, like because it's just me, just outside of frame, and it was just like it got really cramped really quick if I used stuff inside. So we tried to avoid using as much grip and lighting inside as we could. For that reason, because it's tiny. It sucked.
Is it worth discussing? I mean, like, you could throw up a few frames of kind of examples of stuff. I know it felt very natural, the light coming through, almost, except for when you do things that are more surreal like this, right?
Yeah, I think, like, in general, I kind of like, this is the nighttime stuff. Yeah, so all this is like, you know, light through that front window. So that's Mark McKinney. You might know him from Kids in the Hall. So I'm a big fan of Kids in the Hall, so it was like kind of cool to be on set with Mark McKinney. But see, like, it's all kind of very natural, you know, pretending there's a window there, very soft on the face, just always sort of, keeping it like as natural as we could do it, really. And this.
Yeah, you have these color tones.
So like, there's two things happening. Like, so we wanted again to keep like noir films, like more new style noir films. They always have a lot of neon signs, but we're in a house, so we're like, how do we do that? You know. So we walked into this house. Long story is that we lost our main location 2 days before our shoot. So we were literally walking around the streets of Winnipeg trying to find a house, and this lady comes out of her house and she's like, "Oh, what are you guys shooting a movie?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're looking for a location. We shoot in 2 fucking days." And she's like, "Oh, you gotta see my friend's house. It's crazy. You gotta come see it." We're like, all right. Like, we were just so at a loss at this point because we've seen like 30 houses, or you know, and they're all just like really let down. So the one we had is perfect, and we lost it. So we walk into this house, and it's a tiki. It looks like, so it's a tiki themed basement, and we didn't add anything. There is no like Gordon's up there too. So Gord got lucky here a little bit. Like, he added things too, and rearranged it a little bit differently. But in general, this is the basement of the house. Like, it's a 600 square foot tiki themed basement. And everything, like the whole thing, not just one section of the thing. It was like, you can kind of see how there's you know, like palm leaf, whatever it is, ceilings and shit. Anyway, so it was awesome. So that allowed us to at least do cool things like this green light on the wall, just because it's just fun to do it. And so that at nighttime that looks really cool on the actors' faces and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But the cool thing was that those fixtures were in the wall already. So she had the whole basement was surrounded by these one single Kino tube fixtures. So we just like, and some of them, this might have been the color that was actually in there. We might have augmented it a little bit, but she had like reds, and it was crazy, totally nuts. Yeah, you can see the wall. That's the real wall. We didn't have that at all. Yeah. So so all this stuff seems a bit softer and a bit nicer and not super contrasty. It just kind of like, you know, it's a comfort zone, and then it kind of grows to, you know, to get to this point where it's like deep, and so it's like hard light on people now, and like contrastier. And so it evolves into this story where it's a little bit, you know, like this scene is like super.
Oh yeah.
There's some cool flares in the scene too. So like, you know, the idea was to like eventually progressively get it into a film noir world, and it didn't end up being that way so much because we realized that there's so much comedy in the script, plus it's a bunch of comedian actors, so it didn't get as dark as maybe we intended it to. But it's, yeah. Oh yeah, right. And so like, but we still had chances to do things like the classic
super hazy.
Yeah, super hazy. You know, like just shafts of light and stuff. Like, I would love to do like a movie that's just all, you know, like total film noir. But yeah, so there's like some cool flares and stuff from those lenses, and
all the practical lights you threw up in there.
Yeah. So yeah, in general, it digresses into this, or evolves into this like a little bit more film noir looking thing. So then we sort of had there's some scenes. Yeah, this is like a. So in the garage, yeah, we had some. Yeah, see like the. So like we had we got to do our neon signs and stuff, and at least like so when he walks it like the bad character walks into the garage, and it feels a bit scarier, and because there's red light spilling on him and some more green there. So we did get to like use the film noir-y kind of. This is a cool scene. Where is it? That's right before here. Yeah, this is the film noir I stick it. It's kind of, but yeah. So it's like that red light and thundery kind of feel. So it's almost like that classic trope of he invites the beast into his house. So thankfully there are times where we got to do some film noir, like our influences, neon-y kind of cool light, like cool colors and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you see, like your camera movements, you've got the smooth slider kind of moves, and then you've got these whip pans that kind of just come into there.
Yeah.
So is that something, a discussion that you had with the director as well?
Yeah. We were limited to how we could move in that house. Unfortunately, like it was very small, so we had dolly. We tried to do as much movement as we could, but there just wasn't a lot of place to put dolly track and dolly. And we had a slider, but we sort of we used it a couple times, but it never felt like it was long enough. The slider was never long enough. And then when we get track in there, the actors have to like walk over it or move, just be kind of. So there is some dolly stuff. The shot before this is a dolly shot, but and the panning just makes it feel like things are a little bit uneasy. I think like we never really discussed like why the pans happen, but whenever we do a whip pan, it's always like something's wrong. It's like there's what's that over there, or like what he's looking at something. Oh shit, that's what he's looking at. So instead of cutting to the shot of what he's looking at, like the reverse or something, you just, since I lit through windows a lot of times, it gave us the option to pan over and like, show what he's looking at, And so there's a bunch of whip pans in here that just reveal something, like, that's what he's looking at, or that's why he's reacting like this,
That's great use of movement.
Yeah. It's a little like, so there's lots of zooms in here too, which I love. So like, if you look at like old film noirs, there's always like slow zooms and cool shit.
So you had anamorphic zooms then as well?
Yeah, it was the front element had been changed.
Okay.
So it was like a front element. It was ingenue. It was proper anamorphic, but it was adapted to anamorphic. It wasn't actually an anamorphic lens, I think. It looks great though. I mean, so every time we go outside of the house, the idea was to, whenever we show pieces of the house, is to always have a slow creep on the house, because it's kind of the hero of the movie is this guy named Mitch, but the house is kind of where it all takes place and they're all battling for in a weird way. So we'd always want it to be feel a little ominous. So we just do little tiny zooms, on. So we had this giant zoom with us, but we only used it 10 times because of all the establishing shots. And so this one's a pretty cool one now, like this. Yeah, this. So yeah, there's the whip pan. Again, he's revealing something. Like instead of cutting to something, Matt really likes to just show something. Like just if I can see over there, there's no lights. So yeah, that zoom in on the house is. Yeah. So we're always trying to move it as much as we can, but again, we're kind of limited to the space we were in, and the fact that we had to be prepped. Yeah, that really worked. Yeah, the match cut. The cool thing is, I mean, the crappy thing for us is that we storyboarded the other house, like the whole thing, every single shot.
Oh yeah. And
so we get into this house, and we had basically a day to think about it. So all that movement we planned in the other house, which is really big and open concept, and it's easy to put dolly anywhere. All we had to rethink almost every single shot in a day. So we get there a little early on set every day and sort of plan out every scene that we'd be shooting. But again, we were kind of limited to the size and limited to how much time we had to plan. Because when you're doing a dolly shot, it has to be very intentional, and there's a reason for it. And in the old house, there's lots of reasons to do it and lots of room to do it. But this one was sort of a bit, we can't do that shot we wanted to, but if we do it just in another shot, it doesn't really make sense, so we might as well just not do a dolly, let's just lock this off, you know? So a lot of that was on the fly, figuring out or in the morning we'd go early and try to figure out, do we do a dolly here? Do we need, or can we do a dolly here? Because it's so tiny. But so we tried to move, we'd love to move the camera more, but with limitations, small house, you only have so much you can do, you know?
Yeah.
So the limitations are good sometimes. I think that it has a style to it now that is because of the limitations we had in that tiny little house, you know? Yeah.
Cool. Anything else, or should we maybe wrap it up there?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Anything else on that list, or I don't know? That's probably it.
Camp choice, lens choices, lighting in small houses.
Yeah, I think I kind of covered it all.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, this is all interesting stuff for me, and maybe for somebody else who's watching this.
I hope so.
Yeah, so the film, we just put the Blu-rays together. You did, I watched you did. So that's going out for submissions for festivals right now?
Yeah, so it's, I think we just did a big mass apply to a bunch of festivals. The list is endless, so we pick our top choices, and we're out to all those top choices right now.